Hello and welcome back to You, Me, and IBMI. Due to an unforeseen chain of events, Alex and I ended up taking an unplanned summer break from our recording schedule. Today we're back with a new episode about PTFs featuring my colleague, Loralie. PTFs are a key part of the IBMI experience, and we thought our listeners would appreciate hearing from one of the best, and, along with me apparently, learning how to pronounce her last name. Thanks for listening.
I don't want to talk too much, Loralie. Loralie.
Yes,
Why do I say
Loralie.
that? Yes, it is Loralie. We talked about this last time. And then I went to Germany, and, you know, the great thing about German is it's not a completely phonetic pronunciation.
Yes, it is. Actually, I do have some German descent, and that's where my parents must have got the spelling.
Cool. And Fritel, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Nope, Fritel.
Seriously? That's how you pronounce your last name? Fritel?
Yes, what do you think it was?
Fritel.
If you use the English rules, it should be Fritel, but we pronounce it Fritel.
Fritel. I didn't know that.
You can't trust last names at all, or first names, obviously.
Welcome to You, Me, and IBMI.
I don't know how I screwed up that calendar entry because normally it just defaults to make a reminder, right? I don't know why it didn't do that this time. But Kurt, I guess a 15-minute reminder wouldn't have helped anyway because he was at the office.
Yeah, somehow I thought it was this afternoon. Anyway, all right. I'm going to get it going.
I don't think Kurt is ready.
He's not.
Does he do this every time, Alex? Is this something
No.
through?
The thing is, he thought it was in the afternoon, right? We had scheduled the previous one in the afternoon, and he and I are both at home in like every afternoon. I go to the office in the morning, but I stayed home today just because of the episode here. But Kurt thought it was in the afternoon, so he had to drive home quick.
Yeah, I know. I've been a little scattered lately. Well, Alex, it's been 2 months since we did our last podcast of You, Me, and IBMI. And honestly, I can't even remember. What was it about?
I don't know.
That is a fail. That's a fail on our thing. We got to look that up. It was not Loralie. It was supposed to be Loralie Fritel because she is just a wizard at PTFs. But what we found out on that recording, which we actually did, was that I am not very good at knowing how to set up a microphone. So we had recorded an entire podcast with Loralie Fritel, who is the known expert on PTFs in the support center. And I made the mistake, Alex, of two things. One, I did not set up the microphone properly, so your audio was horrible. And two, I did not realize that my mother would be moving in with us, and our life has kind of been turned upside down for about a month and a half. So a lot of little appointments, a lot of visits to different places around Rochester to get her situated. And that's been a little hard. So let's think about what are some good things that have happened to us. Who wants to go first? The last month and a half. Alex, anything exciting happen to you?
Well, we had a summer break. We had a vacation. We went on a 2-week trip to Germany and practiced our German and saw the sights in Bavaria. So a lot of train travel. We did not rent a car. We did the whole thing with public transportation. A lot of time spent on the train, which is great because like you get to meet people, and I don't know. It's a unique way for an American, at least, to travel. It was fun.
Yeah, I love public transportation. Loralie, did you say that you went on a vacation too?
Yes, I've been spending some time at a lake place, and then also our family my side of the family got together, and we're pretty large, so it was a fun gathering of all my siblings and my parents and my nieces and nephews.
So you had a family reunion?
Yes.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I've only ever been to one family reunion in my whole life. That was one time we took a picture kind of showing like how the people were connected as far as where they're standing in the picture, and that was it. But that was a lot of fun. I saw a lot of people I didn't know, so those are cool. Yeah. I'm
actually going to my family's cabin in the North Woods next week for I'm going to get together with all my siblings. I've got 5 brothers and sisters, so we're all going to cram into that little cabin. Well, it's not that little, but I guess it's small for the 20-some of us.
Yeah, when you get enough people in a cabin, it becomes a little smaller.
It does, yeah.
I've actually always admired that about your family, because you do your parents are really good about making sure that you guys get together at least once a year and do something fun. That's
we all enjoy it.
It's nice.
We all enjoy it.
Yeah, in our family we like to. Right now we're trying to do organize our annual trip to Door County, because the kids like to go up there and have a fish boil and go on hikes up there, and it's just pretty up there in Wisconsin. So this year's might not happen though, because my good news is that Owen passed his post test for his police program yesterday, so he is all set to start on the as an officer in the Duluth Police Department as soon as their police academy starts up again this fall. So
has he seen those movies, by the way, the police academy?
He
movies?
Is not. I did ask him if he's seen the police academy movies. He's
not a real policeman, then, dude.
Probably not. He probably needs to see that and probably watch a couple of at least watch the original Super Troopers, and then he'll be good.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And he'll be good. Well, today, unfortunately, we're not talking about our German vacations or how great how great our kids are and how proud we are of our kids, but we're talking to Loralie Fritel, who is, while she is proud of her kids, we're all proud of how much Loralie knows about PTFs. So, Loralie, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Loralie, what is a PTF?
Well, the official definition of a PTF is PTF stands for Program Temporary Fix, and it's a single fix which is applied to correct specific reported problems for a certain module or service program or program.
Okay. Now, when I started, having come from the world of POSIX, Unix, Linux type operating systems, I was assuming that a PTF was a very specific piece of code which our developers had written almost like a patch, which would patch a part of the code to make it work differently. But that's not what it is. So what you're saying is it's like a whole new program, I guess, to replace something that's existing. Is that kind of what it is?
Well, we don't patch a program. We actually deliver the applied or the corrected problems in that module. So when you have a PTF that addresses a certain module, you receive that entire module, not just a patch.
And that makes sense, because the next question I think customers always have is, what is the difference between a temporarily applied and a permanently applied PTF? And the fact that they can be removed, aka that they're temporary, really necessarily shows that at any point you could say, nah, take that one off and use the one from before. So it's not really going in and coding anything specifically.
Right. We save a copy when it's temporarily applied, so you'll have a copy of a temp PTF, and then you'll have the permanent. So the previous version is now permanent. Or if you perm-apply a PTF, it's always in a permanently applied status. Now, removing a temp-applied PTF can be simple, but it can also be difficult, especially if there's requisite PTFs, or you have to, basically to remove any licensed program or operating system fix, you have to follow the same instructions to remove it as you did to apply it. So if it required an IPL, you're going to require an IPL to remove it.
Oh, I worked now in Save Restore for a couple of years, and I guess I didn't realize that. If it requires an IPL to put on, it requires an IPL to take off. I guess maybe I thought that was too extreme or something, but I never even occurred to me to think about that. Although it also is pretty rare that we see and have to tell customers to take a PTF off, since usually they work very well.
Right. There is an exception to that, and that's license internal code fixes. So license internal code fixes actually have an A and a B side. So that's only for license internal code fixes or for the microcode or the 5770999 product, however you like to look at it. So those fixes, when the perm applied PTFs are on the A side, the temp applied PTFs are on the B side. So there are different rules for license internal code PTFs. If you're running on the B side, you can actually remove a temp applied PTF without an IPL, even if it required an IPL to be applied. So, but operating system and license program fixes, so anything operating system wise or license program wise, there's no A and B side. So whatever you did to temp apply it, you have to undo or redo to remove it.
All right, so Loralie, I talked to a customer recently over the weekend, which is never a good sign, that was applying PTFs, and they took their system to a restricted state in order to do it. Is that recommended or common practice when applying PTFs?
It's not uncommon. So it kind of depends on, you want to review that cover letter. And some PTFs require, in order for you to immediately apply it, that you end certain subsystems or JVMs, or depends on what PTF. So a lot of times going restricted state will suffice to meet those special instructions, and then you can apply it immediately.
Okay, but you wouldn't like make a blanket recommendation that says, okay, if you're going to apply more than a dozen PTFs, take your system to a restricted state just to be safe. I mean, do you have to review the cover letter of all the PTFs that you're applying?
If you're applying them individually, yes, it's highly recommended to review those cover letters, especially if you are applying them immediate. You should always review the cover letters. If you are applying PTFs delayed, I would not recommend a customer bring their system to restricted state, because you're just loading and setting those PTFs to be applied at the next IPL. So it's not like we're trying to apply any PTFs immediate, and you shouldn't need that restricted state to set PTFs to be applied.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I guess let's say you're running a shop and you kind of operate on the mentality, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so now you're 2 years behind on all your group PTFs. What do you recommend for a customer that's in that situation? Where should they start?
Loralie, can I interject something here?
Sure.
The best thing I've ever heard from anybody on this topic is from Dennis Huffman, who you've been working with for your entire time here. And we do have a lot of customers that have that mentality. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or they only put on PTFs, every year or every couple years, or a cum every couple years or something like that. And I was talking to Dennis about it one time, and he said, there's a business case to be made for remaining a cum behind. He said there was no business case to be made for remaining years behind.
I'd agree with that.
And I think that whenever I see somebody who is that far behind, I assume, we love our customers, but I assume that they either don't have someone who is familiar enough with it, with the process of putting on PTFs, so that they kind of put it off until they can't put it off anymore, or they haven't yet figured out a way to do it in a way that makes sense for their business. It's crazy to be that far behind on PTFs, especially when there's so many security vectors and issues going on.
I mean, particularly the hyper, right? I mean, high impact pervasive. It seems like customers are pretty good at staying current on the hyper group, but man, when they don't, that's a real problem.
Right. So if you're far behind on, say, several years behind on PTFs, the first thing I guess I would suggest to do is you want to get current on the QM for sure, which will come with the database and the hypergroup, and consider all groups as well. You definitely should have a save of your system before you go to the next level, and you should review the QM instructions, because there's a read this first section in the QM instructions, and many times there's nuggets in there that will prevent you from having issues with installing PTFs, or you'll have a to-do like you should always perm apply your license internal code fixes before you put on the next QM. So there's things you should be doing that can prevent you from having issues during your PTF install that are covered in that read this first section. But you can go from, several years behind QM to the latest QM, but there is some greater risk there. So like Kurt was saying, we don't recommend, we recommend that customers stay at least within a year, hopefully just one QM level behind at the most, right? But at least schedule yearly maintenance, if not every quarter or 6 months, right? You really have to look at your environment and see what you need. Groups are released more often than the QM, because the QMs are released twice a year generally. And different groups have fixes for certain areas like database, and those could be released quarterly or once, 3 times a year, so they're more current than the QM. And then we have what you call this hyper group, which stands for high impact pervasive, as Alex mentioned. That group can be released every 2 weeks, and that's a group to really pay attention to, because if you encounter the problems that are fixed or listed in that group, it's either going to be high impact to your environment or it's going to be annoying and pervasive.
Right. So it might be like a performance issue or some kind of access issue that would affect more people. I guess what's the difference between a regular PTF and a PTF that would wind up on the hyper?
So hyper PTFs are marked by the developer. So the developer determines whether this issue is high impact. So a lot of those high impact PTFs are going to be they're high impact. Like if you don't, your system could crash during an IPL if you don't have this on.
Sure.
That's going to be pretty impactful to your environment. And then if they're things that are pervasive, meaning a lot of customers are hitting this and it's impacting maybe licensing, for instance, then they might mark those hyper, not because it's high impact, but it's a pervasive, annoying issue that many customers are hitting, and we want to get that fixed out so not so many are hitting that issue.
Gotcha. Loralie, so you've been working in SaverStore the entire time you've been at IBM, or were you in another team at one point?
I did a short stint with Client Access a long time ago.
Oh, you did?
Yes. So, but I can't say it's nothing like Access Client Solutions is much different than the Client Access that I that I was part of for I think 6 months.
That wasn't OS 2 days, was it?
No, I never
not
did.
Not that far back.
OS
Okay.
It wasn't. I'm not that old.
All right. Because that was the operating system that our desktops were running when I started. Just to date myself, I guess.
When did you start?
It was Warp 4.
A long time ago. I think it was 97.
Okay. Well, I started in December of 98, and I never did have an OS 2 operating system.
Oh, no? Huh. Straight to...
We'll have to correct. We'll have to send you one. I have a couple versions of it on my desk, so... I have Warp 4, and I think I have Warp 2 or 3, so... I'll ship you a copy of that. We try to make these things, these podcast episodes, interesting and informative. So where I was getting at there, Loralie, was you've been doing PTFs for a long time.
Have there been any big changes in PTFs? Because over the last 20 years or so, there's been quite a lot of changes in the way PTFs are delivered on consumer platforms, right? IBMI, of course, is a business machine, so that is quite different. But I like with Windows platforms and Android, and I suppose Mac, the OS X platform as well. They kind of deliver the fixes automatically. And the user doesn't have to do anything. And again, this is a consumer. These are consumer platforms, so it really doesn't compare to an enterprise type of platform like IBMI. But do you see any automation on the horizon, or does it exist already and people aren't taking advantage of it for the IBMI?
There is some automation available, and that's fairly recent. You can set that up through your change service attributes, and you have to use electronic customer service, I believe, ECS. So like the send PTF order is what you would have to use. There's no automation through Fix Central, but you can actually have it download the QM or whatever groups you decide. You can set that up in your change service attributes to do that automatically. Most of our customers do not want to apply PTFs with their next IPL. They want to plan that, because that next IPL for putting on PTFs can be lengthy. So I don't see the automation taking hold in the IBMI server world like you do for your Windows PC, because when your server is down, that impacts your whole company, right? Not just the user at their PC. So there is some automation to download PTFs, and you could set it up to apply at the next IPL if that's what you desired.
People want to have their own finger on the trigger, I guess, right?
Yes, and you'll want to have things like a save of the system before you do that. So, there are some things you should have in place before you apply PTFs as well.
Funny that you bring that up, Loralie, because one of the first things I found when I started at Save Restore was that there was the option, because I was helping a customer download this group PTF, and which we'll get into later, but I was helping him download this group PTF, and it occurred to me, there should be an automatic way for someone to just schedule to download a group PTF or a QM. And when I looked into it, that had been around for years. There was a big document about it that Dawn May had written back when she was the head of LUG. And as far as I know, no one was using it. And I talked to some people on the team about it, and they said most people don't like to automate that, because even though you can say, well, download the QM or say download the hyper every 2 weeks, if you schedule that, then you might download it one day, and a couple days later when you go to apply it, there could be another hyper that just came out that you'd have to go download anyway. So people can automate that stuff and automatically have a group or a QM come down and put itself into like an image catalog with its images, but very few people use that. I'd like to see more people using it. And when I think about it, the reason that the person I asked gave me for why it might not be popular doesn't really jive with a lot of customers, because most customers are probably at least one hyper back anyway. So why would they care if the one they're putting on just, a new one just came out a little bit after that? Because, they're probably usually want to be one back anyway. But that was funny. It is possible to automate that stuff, but maybe not as completely as we might think.
Right. Like Alex was alluding to, I think our customers want a little bit more control as to when it happens and what exactly they're installing. So if you're automating the download, you're not really paying attention to what's being downloaded or applied per se. And so if there is an impact on your system, it might be harder to track down or or link it to a PTF install, if you will.
Yeah, it's good to have that control. Last week, actually, we were going to record this podcast, and shortly before it, Windows decided it wanted to reboot on me, and then it started installing fixes, and I thought I'd be down for, I was like, well, maybe hopefully this will be back up in 5 minutes. And it was like 35, 40 minutes later when it finally came back up. So I suppose that's why the IBMI architects decided not to have the system automatically apply PTFs whenever it thought it was necessary.
That's pretty ironic, right? The fixes application on your Windows laptop prevented us from recording our podcast about fixes.
It was not lost on me. Yeah.
Cool. What's a common case that you guys get where, I mean, maybe with a little bit foreknowledge, customers could avoid opening those cases? Or are they all totally different?
One question that comes up quite often is there's a PTF that they're trying to apply, which they see is an immediate fix, but then they get a message saying they can't apply it immediate, and they want to know why.
Sure.
And again, I think you have to look at the whole chain of the PTF and your special instructions. So reading the cover letter is pretty important, more than just whether this PTF can be applied or immediate or delayed. Because an immediate PTF can become delayed if one of those requisites in the chain is delayed. So if you're trying to apply PTFs immediate or trying to apply any PTF, you have to consider the requisites and what they require. So that's one thing, look, if you're applying immediate PTF, also look at the requisite chain and then read those cover letters as well. The other thing that can cause it is there's something we call conditional immediate. So that means that unless the delayed PTF if you have a PTF that supersedes a delayed PTF, so we have, as you know, the PTFs address a certain module. So those modules can be fixed multiple times. Sometimes a module will require a delayed fix, and then the next fix could be applied immediate, but only if that version of the delayed fix was already perm-applied to the system. So you can have what's called a conditional immediate. That means that this PTF can only be applied if this version of the PTF was already installed on your system. Otherwise, you also have to apply it delayed.
Both the cases that you just mentioned, the issue about wanting to put a PTF on immediately, but a requisite is not on, so you can't do it, and the situation of a conditional immediate highlight one very core problem, and that is that if you don't keep up on the latest fixes, or at least generally be applying things regularly, you are more likely to run into cases where an important PTF that you want to get on cannot be applied because you haven't been keeping up with PTFs regularly.
That is true. Yep, you'll see this more often when customers are down level on their PTFs and they're trying to just apply a specific PTF for their problem. Or a database PTF, because database PTFs tend to have like huge requisite chains. So if you can find a database PTF that's immediate, sometimes you might I feel lucky.
Well, database is the most important part of the system, so.
That's true.
But it also sounds like a lot of cases that come in could be headed off by reading the cover letter, right?
Yes, reading the cover letter, reading the QM instructions, and then, even if you're applying a PTF that's not standalone, I mean, don't overcomplicate a load and apply. That's a tip I would have. Use Go PTF option 8 when you can. That's not just for QM and groups, right? Go PTF option 8 can be used to install, one to a set of a PTF and all of its requisites. So the benefit of using like Go PTF option 8 to install a PTF that has requisites is that this process will load all those PTFs, because some of those requisites might be for different products as well. So GoPTF will load those PTFs for all the products, and then it will set them to be applied at the next IPL, or you can change the other options to say apply immediate, assuming you've read through the cover letters and met all the special instructions. You can also use GoPTF option 8 to immediately apply those PTFs. So I think a lot of the questions we have that are regarding even loading and applying PTFs can be resolved by using GoPTF option 8, so you don't get into that chain where I can't apply PTF A because it's missing requisite B. And so that a user doesn't have to worry about what order to load and apply PTFs. Use GoPTF option 8 because it does all that for you in the proper order.
Let's say you do have a whole bunch of PTF cover letters that you feel you should read before using either option 8 or just a load PTF command or something. What's the most efficient way? I mean, how do you go through a bunch of cover letters like in the most efficient manner?
I would say you don't, but I think Loralie's going to have another answer. I would say if you have a certain number, like Loralie said, go PTF option 8, do a delayed, because most of those cover letters are going to be talking about what to do if you don't do it delayed. But now Loralie is going to be able to give the nuanced version of that answer.
Yes, I agree with what you just said. If there's like a database PTF with a lot of requisites that want to be put on, I almost always suggest, hey, apply this delayed, because you're going to run into some kind of delayed PTF in that requisite chain. If you insist on reviewing every cover letter or making sure you follow, that's when maybe LX, like bringing your system restricted, could help you. Right? You restrict your system because most of the special instructions are going to be, you need to end this subsystem, or you need to end JVM applications, right? So if you bring your system restricted, that might suffice for some of those special instructions. But there could be things you miss if you don't read the cover letters. Sometimes you have to, like, delete a directory, for instance. There was an old PTF where one of the special instructions was to delete a directory before you apply it, or check if this directory existed. So those things would be missed if you don't read the cover letters. If you're far behind on PTFs, I still think reading the QM instructions, whether or not you're putting on the QM, is a good idea, whether you're putting on groups or QMs, or sometimes, because those QM instructions do address certain known issues we experience when applying PTFs. But in general, if you have a large amount of cover letters and you just can't read them all, then yes, the best practice would be to mark them delayed and apply the PTFs with an IPL. As far as reading cover letters, just to go back to that, you can search on a PTF, or we do have a preventative service planning site too, where you can find, for groups, for instance, you can find the group level and it lists all the PTFs in that group, and it actually will mark them or underline them as to whether or not they have special instructions. So we do have some methods to try to highlight, hey, you really should read this cover letter.
Okay, cool. How did you wind up in this role, Loralie? Did you go to Save Restore College, or how did maybe you could tell us a little bit about your career history?
I don't think most of us get to pick which team we're put on when we're hired with the support center, but I'm pretty happy to be with the Save Restore team. I think it's one of the best teams to be on in the support center. I'm sure other people would say opposite, but when I was first hired back in '98, I interviewed. I actually worked for IBM first as an intern, testing hard drives, and then I interviewed with the support center. There was a job opening, and Nate was the manager that hired me in the and he was the manager for Save Restore. And I was a math major, so he said, math majors really do well in this field because.
That's right. You mentioned that you've had a lifelong interest in math. Okay.
Yeah, approaching a problem and solving it. So I think that's served me well through this career.
Yeah, great.
And later, I think, Loralie, you worked for an accounting company, I think.
Yes, I took a brief break with IBM, and I worked for another company in Fargo in the support area. And I have to say it made me really appreciate the support structure at IBMI. Just the ability to report the problems directly to our development and have a direct access to discussing issues with development is huge. And not every support center actually lets you access their developers. So I feel fortunate to have that opportunity because it really opened my eyes to how great IBMI support really is.
Well, I'm glad you had that opportunity and could relay it to us because I've only worked, but my only professional job has been here in the IBMI Support Center. So I suppose I take it for granted sometimes. So I appreciate you relaying your experience.
Yeah. I do think that's one of the pivotal points in my career where it really made me appreciate what we do and how we do it. So,
yeah.
And I really
Cool.
appreciate the customer focus that we really put in the IBMI Support Center.
Well, Loralie, thank you for joining us today. I apologize that we had made you do this twice because the first time we didn't set it up right. But I'm sure glad you agreed to come back and join us on You,
Me,
and IBMI.